Welcome everybody to today's Expert Talks. We have Bianca van Aswegen. She's a criminologist and a national coordinator for Missing Children SA. She's here to educate us on missing children, on children trafficking, and just the dangers and the very dark world that that is just lurking one or two streets away from wherever you live. Not only in South Africa, I think it's a global problem, and hopefully today she'll help us unpack some do's and don'ts and how to educate our children, and also how to do our utmost best to prevent this from happening to us or our loved ones. Next to me, as always, Anna-Marie Meyer.
Thank you so much.
Loving mother of two, big boys already, and yeah, I'm excited to meet you, even though it's over Zoom. Thank you very much for agreeing to to do this, and as we discussed off camera, hopefully we can educate and empower people to make better informed decisions and to protect their children in a smarter way. I'm going to kick it off with Sound of Freedom, the movie that came out, and it put a light on what is actually going on in the world. If you don't mind, can we start unpacking it? Have you seen the movie? What did you think of the movie? And then take it from there into some of our questions, if you don't mind.
Perfect. But firstly, I would like to thank you for having me. This is really wonderful. Yes, I actually got to see the pre-screening of Sound of Freedom, and it is such an amazing movie where reality is actually portrayed, and the seriousness of what we are facing regarding human trafficking, not just in South Africa, but worldwide. It's a subject that's always been put under wraps. People don't want to talk about the subject of human trafficking. And this movie has just come out and made people realize, hold on, this is what we are facing. This is the true reality of what is going out there in the world. So Sound of Freedom has really opened that door to open discussions about human trafficking, to get the awareness out there of human trafficking worldwide. Like I said, it's not just American based, it's based all over the world. It's come to our shores first, and it's amazing to see the message and the hope that we have at the end of the day with facing this problem of human trafficking.
I want to ask a question. How much of that movie actually relates to what happens in South Africa, and how much of that takeaway can we say, okay, this is actually reality, in our beautiful country?
Unfortunately, this is happening, as I said, across the world. We don't, for instance, have, specific that case that happened within South Africa, but we've got similar cases happening. We have to look at the types of human trafficking we deal with. We've got sexual exploitation, we've got forced labor. If we just take those two and compare it with Sound of Freedom that's happening in South Africa, we've got girls and young ladies being taken for sexual exploitation and prostitution. We've got forced labor where young boys and even girls are taken to these farms and used as cheap labor. So the reality of that is, yes, it's happening in South Africa, and that's the message we need to understand. That this is something that is not just American-based when we look at Sound of Freedom, but that message that it relates to human trafficking, that is exactly what is happening in other cases around the world and here in South Africa. So to mention just another few, we deal with organ trafficking, we've got sexual exploitation, forced labor, we've even got illegal adoptions that are happening within human trafficking. Wow. So yes, it is definitely related. We might not have that exact case to summarize it, but we've got similar cases that are happening in and around us.
Okay. Can you provide us an overview of your organization, and what is the goal, and how do you go about strategically on prevention and education? Just a basic overview.
So Missing Children South Africa is a non-profit organization that started in 2007. So we started with this when two little girls, one in Pretoria and one in the Western Cape, went missing, and the need was seen to help those families when a child goes missing, because a lot of people don't know what to do when a child goes missing, what the procedure is, who to contact, how to open a case with SAPS. So that is where we started assisting the public when it comes to missing persons cases, and we grew ever since. So we deal with cases where children or adults go missing, kidnapping, human trafficking, all of that. And our main mission is to educate our public on the safeties, on how to keep themselves safe, but also our children. I mean, our children are our future. If we don't look after them, we don't have any future left. So it's educating our communities, educating talks at schools that we do. We got some wonderful safety tips available on our website. I'll give that a bit later. And we've also got what we call an interim ID kit that a parent can actually download. They can fill it in. It's all the necessary detail that they need. Should they find themselves in a situation where their child has gone missing, they've got all that necessary information on hand to go and open that missing persons case. We do ask parents to please update that every 6 months to a year as your child grows and length and weight differs, and update with a recent photograph. So our mission is to not just educate, but prevention is better than cure. So if we can educate our communities, educate our children on how to keep themselves safe, we hope to have one less child go missing in South Africa.
Bianca, tell me, how do you guys, your organization, collaborate with the law enforcement agencies?
We work directly with the South African Police Services and other law enforcement agencies. So we have to have a case be opened with the South African Police Services for us to be able to assist. To make sure that a missing persons case has been reported, we then do a flyer and we post on social media. So we are basically directly in contact with the South African Police Services on every single missing persons case, whether it's children or adults. We make sure that any leads that come in, we relay through to the SAP station where the case has been opened. We actually update the families as well on, the progress of the case. And then we work with other, international organizations, for instance, when we've got a possible trafficking case or a child that might have been abducted, a parental abduction that has been taken out of our country. And then also other law enforcement agencies like our anti-human trafficking task team within the Hawks, as well as the kidnapping task team.
What is the major risk that we face when children go missing? Is there a specific role? Is there a specific type they look at? What guidelines can we give?
Okay, so when a child goes missing, we look at various reasons within South Africa why children go missing. So we deal with children that run away from home. This is mostly due to abuse that we've actually seen happening within homes. So it's not just a child that's not getting their way by not having a cell phone or having a fight with mom and dad. There's a lot of abuse going on and children tend to wander off or actually run away from home. We've got mentally challenged children that tend to wander off by themselves and get lost. We've got kidnapping cases that happen and human trafficking. So we urge parents and the communities to be more vigilant about their surroundings. For instance, children having to walk from school and back home, to school in the mornings and back home. Make sure, if you cannot have any adult supervision, that the children walk in a group, not alone. Leaving your child alone at home is also not a good idea. We have to always have adult supervision over our children. One of the main things also is social media use. Parents need to monitor their children's social media use to see what they are doing. Social media is actually one of our biggest platforms where this grooming is actually taking place for human trafficking towards our children. Sexual exploitation. We've even got pedophiles, that are on social media that are grooming these children. So we need to be more vigilant, need to be more careful of who we expose our children to, what we expose our children to, but also we need to educate them on the dangers so they know how to keep themselves safe.
I want to jump into some statistics and trends that relate to this. Can you give us perhaps just an overview of global trends and statistics, and then maybe some that are local, South African stats, so that people can actually see the severity of this problem and how massive it actually is?
Statistics is actually a very difficult thing to comment on, because South African Police Services last put out stats in 2013,
yes,
which stated one child goes missing every 5 hours in South Africa. So that dates back to 2013. Unfortunately, since then, no new stats has been released. But we as an organization see an increase in cases yearly being reported to us. But also, if we look at human trafficking, for instance, South African has been declared as a human trafficking hub by the US Department of State. So that alone tells us what a concern South Africa is when it comes to human trafficking. Unfortunately, statistics only also gives us a general indication of what we are actually facing. There are many cases that go unreported, people that are in rural areas that are unable to open cases. Lockdown and COVID has put such a big effort into that, where police stations were closed, where people were unable to go and open a missing persons case. And unfortunately, there's a lack of trust within the communities towards the police for having to actually go there and open the case and ask for assistance. So that is also where we come in and guide the people and the families on how to open that missing persons case so that they get the assistance they needed. So those are some of the things that really has had an impact, on the statistics of children going missing in our country. COVID, once again, we've seen a massive increase in kidnappings that have escalated. For instance, we are dealing with over 1,000 kidnappings being reported in South Africa monthly. And that is a massive amount. It's something like almost a 300% increase in the last year that we've seen with kidnappings happening. We've got kidnappings that happen for various reasons: extortion, ransom demand kidnappings, opportunistic kidnappings. All of this is money related. People have lost their jobs, unfortunately, due to COVID and lockdown. So people are desperate, whether they are desperate in the sense of falling victim to being kidnapped or human trafficked, or being on the other side where they fall victim to these gangs and are actually part of these kidnapping syndicates or human trafficking syndicates. So we face a massive problem in general when it comes to all types of missing persons and children's cases in South Africa.
I want to find out locations. So where are the most common places where a kidnapping would happen? What, is it at malls? Is it at schools? Or where's the sort of like the hotspot for incidents to take place?
And is it age dependent?
Yes, that's also a great question.
So we have to look at what type of case we're dealing with within kidnapping. As I mentioned, we've got parental abductions, we've got opportunistic kidnappings, we've got kidnappings for ransom that happen, we've got even mutual-related kidnappings, unfortunately, in our country. So it all depends on what and who the victim is and where and what they are going to be used for. So if we look at human trafficking, for instance, yes, these syndicates might have what we call a shopping list. If they're looking at a specific, group of children, blonde with blue eyes, and if they get all of them, it could be anywhere, whether it's in front of the school, in a shopping center, at their home. If we look at kidnappings, most of these kidnappings actually take place when these children are transported from and to school, or whether they are walking from school or going to the mall with their parents, because it's a wide open public space, so they're easily accessible. If it comes to parental abductions, it's usually due to a custody agreement, and who's got custody of the child and who the child is with, and, the related instances with that. So it's really difficult to say, because it can happen to anyone at any time, at any place. We've got so many ransom kidnappings that are currently happening. Mostly these people that are targets are wealthy families, unfortunately. But we have even seen kidnappings cases that are happening for 500 Rand, so it's not just always millions of Rand that are asked for these kidnappings, but people are so desperate. So one of the things that I always say is, really, this can happen to anybody at any time, at any place. So we always need to be vigilant. It's not just in front of a school. It's not just at a shopping center. It's also being at your house or coming back from work. To be vigilant when driving into your house, into your driveway, make sure that everybody, or you always, if you have to go meet someone, that someone knows where you are going, what time you're leaving, where you are meeting that person. It's small little changes like that in your everyday life that can actually make such a difference.
Yeah. I want to touch on the fact that you said earlier, it's both boys and girls. I'm aware of a case where someone that's actually very close to me underwent a traumatic experience where his little boy was nearly kidnapped, and by little boy I mean he's a teenager already. He's taller than me, good looking kid. And I always thought, a girl will be targeted, like a teenage girl, young girl. And it's scary because it's both boys and girls. And luckily he was very close by. So when the attempt happened, he was right there. He was able to react. And luckily he wasn't harmed or anything, happened. But it happened at a very popular shopping center in Pretoria. And it happened recently. It is absolutely scary, man. It's and the fact that they do it, in broad daylight on a Sunday, like it's nothing. It's absolutely terrifying.
It is definitely, and he's so lucky that he got out of that situation. And yes, it is true. It's not just girls. Yes, when it comes to human trafficking, the majority of victims are young girls and women, but boys are just as vulnerable.
Yeah.
Not just for human trafficking, for kidnapping related issues as well. I think South Africa's got this, how can I put this, got this perspective of a young teenage boy is untouchable. They're strong. South African men, they can defend for themselves, but it's not true. Anybody can fall victim. Even we've seen so many adults fall victim to these human trafficking cases and kidnapping cases. And it's always that you feel that it could never happen to you. Or like you said, it's someone that you know very closely. And you never thought it could actually
Yeah.
happen to them until it does. And that's actually when people realize, hold on, this is happening in our area. This is happening. It's hitting close to home. And that is what I think also the Sound of Freedom is all about, is to portray that message of this is happening worldwide. This is not just a movie that's being released in America that's just based on American cases of human trafficking. So we've got very much cases, on a monthly basis that we see different types of cases being reported to the organization. Runaways, kidnappings, human trafficking. It's everything that we see on a daily basis. And we really want to open that message up to the public to understand that they should get out of their bubble that they are living in and realize that this is something, whether you are rich or whether you are poor, this is something that can happen to anybody.
But like human trafficking specifically, the kids anyone that disappear in South Africa, we always used to think they always been carried out of the country. But lately I've heard stories they still kept in the country. And that is still sex related. And I would always think, but that child would want to go home. So why does that happen? And is there assistance for families that's been held up with child trafficking, human trafficking?
Yes, definitely. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, South Africa has been declared as a human trafficking hub by the US Department of State. So we transport, import, and transit, import, and export country, meaning we've got victims being brought from outside of our borders into South Africa. We've got victims taken from South Africa out of our borders. And then we've got also, as you mentioned now, we've got victims being used within our own country for prostitution, forced labor, illegal adoptions. So it's not just, as you said, we've got this perspective of trafficking victims are always trafficked out of the countries, but they're used in our own country. We've seen a massive increase, especially with lockdown, the desperation people have of finding jobs, falling for all these false work advertisements, modeling contracts that have been advertised on social media, and children being groomed. So that is one thing that we need to be very careful of. And those rings, most of the time, they actually operate within our own country. So the desperation is out there. We've even had, unfortunately, parents that exploit their own children for money. So they would go out, have their normal day jobs, but actually use their own children to go beg on street corners, to go traffic drugs, to actually use them as prostitutes to bring an extra income into the household due to the lack of income that we have experienced with our social economical crisis in South Africa. So yes, unfortunately, this is happening in our borders, outside our borders. But yes, there are institutions that assist with this. We as an organization fight against human trafficking. We deal with the human trafficking cases. We've got our law enforcement that we work directly with human trafficking. And we've also got a human trafficking hotline in South Africa that is available, that you can phone anonymously if you do find anything suspicious or want to report a human trafficking case, or you can contact us, that we are in direct contact with the human trafficking hotline to report that.
I want to ask you a question on grooming and on social media. So maybe a couple of signs parents should be on the lookout for when their child is being groomed. Is there a temperament change? Is there an attitude change? Is the aggression level higher? Maybe from your experience, and what are the most popular platforms and maybe the most popular ways of starting to groom children? If you could share some insight there, please.
Yes, now social media is one of our biggest platforms where this is actually going on, the grooming of children. So we look at telltale signs, for instance, in a change within a child. They will be more secretive. They won't give access of their phone to their parents to actually have a look what they're doing. They will be, and that's why we always ask parents to be very much more vigilant and open with their children and have an open relationship to know what they are busy with on social media. So, for instance, it will be a fake profile, obviously, that is created by the predator on the other side. So they'll pretend to be this young hunk of a teenage boy that might start, messaging a young girl, telling her how beautiful they are. And also, some of these victims are from vulnerable, backgrounds. So it is a child that's already vulnerable, don't have a good self-esteem, those types of things where they're easily manipulated into these types of relationships. So after a period of time, this person will start, the messages will get more explicit. There will be photos that being exchanged. And unfortunately, then, the meetup is set up and then it's a bit too late. So yes, there are organizations also that monitor these social media sites to make sure these predators and pedophiles, are actually stopped. But this is a widespread thing, and especially also with the work advertisements, the false work and the job advertisements that are going on. People are falling victim to these modeling contracts. Young girls want to know that. They want to hear that. They want to know that they're beautiful. They want to go and work overseas. The false job advertisements is something that has really gotten out of hand. Young girls wanting to go overseas for modeling contracts and actually fall victim to these human trafficking rings. So social media is one of our platforms that we really need to monitor our children on. So we do ask parents to please monitor their social media use. Facebook, Twitter, even WhatsApp. I mean, we've got access to WhatsApp. Children have access to phones. If we can see it, they can see it. There's nothing, there's also these apps that parents can actually download where they've got these age restrictions that they put on the child's phone, and screen time, for instance, that they're only allowed so long on Facebook, for instance, on their phones. So it's all these things that we as parents and guardians can do to safeguard our children. But yes, unfortunately, there are vulnerable children out there that do fall easier victim to this. Children that are abused, that are looking for that attention from someone else and not getting it at home, they will also more easily fall victim to these types of online grooming.
But even with these apps, I've seen that there's still things coming through. I still know about kids, young little girls, that manage to get hold of things that they're not supposed to. And that is after installing all those apps. So yes, this is just the most difficult topic ever, because it's widespread. It's from abduction to trafficking. It's just unbelievable how they still get away with it.
These syndicates are very much sophisticated. So as soon as we think we've got one thing, to implement to combat the problem, it arises in the next thing. As you said, these apps are there, but there's a way to bypass them. These tracking watches that we can put on our children, but how easy is it to take off that tracking watch and dump it in a bin, and your child is still gone? So It's us. It's us as parents. It's us as guardians. It's us as community. It's our responsibility to look after our children and to look after each other within our communities. If we don't stand together, we're not going to be able to fight this. And
Bianca,
people don't want to know. As you say, this is a very bad topic to be speaking about. But if people don't realize this is what is going on and not talking about it and just shying away from it and not bringing the subject up, more people are going to be falling victim to these trafficking rings or kidnappings or children going missing. So this is a very much a rude awakening that we need to face reality. And I think this is also where Sound of Freedom once again comes in to expose this. I mean, that movie has been made 5 years ago already, but never hit the screens. Now that it's hit the screens, it's massive. And people are coming to us and also saying, wow, we never knew about human trafficking. We never knew this is happening. But people are blindsided. People don't want to know about reality and they think it could never happen to them.
Yeah.
But like I said, this is very much sophisticated rings that are operating. They've got all the means of getting access, but it's our responsibility to look after our children.
Bianca, I want to ask you a question. So, not a lot of parents are technically trained the way that you are to approach the subject in a very sensitive, delicate way, so that your intention is to educate and to teach and to create awareness. As a parent, I think raising children and also contributing to their values and principles, it needs to be done in an effective way where you are educating the child, you are making them aware of what's going on, but in a way that it's a balanced act between being self-aware and becoming scared of the world. You don't want to create a child that fears life and fears light and fears and fears going out. Have you got any tips for parents on, I think, number one, how do they approach the topic? And then once that door is open, how to use effective questioning or effective, I'll rather say, leading the child into a direction of making them aware, but yet not making them scared to go out their homes. Have you got any tips for the parents that will watch this?
Yes, that is a very important question. And I think it's something that we even struggle with, in the sense of we don't want to implement fear in our children, but we need to let them understand what reality is.
They need to
and
be
the
aware.
dangers out there. So if we look at our very young children, I mean, we don't want to scare them. We don't want to implement fear in them, but we need to subtly, in a way, tell them that there are dangers. We need to teach them stranger danger, for instance. But we've also seen that stranger danger is not only the thing that happens, it's people close to our children that are actually these predators. It's people that they know. It's people that they're supposed to trust. But I think one of the main things when it comes to children is, as I mentioned, is having that open relationship with them. Sitting with them at dinner table without any phones, having a conversation. How was your day? What has been happening? See the small changes in your child. If there's a behavioral change, if they're retracting to their rooms, if they're more on social media, there's little things to look out for. But we need to have this conversation. So how to approach your child with this? I think the best with our small children is to start subtly by downloading, for instance, our safety tips that we've got on our website, teaching them what a family safe password is, for instance. If you can't pick up your child from school and you have to send someone else, the child is allowed to ask that person the family exclusive password. So it is to know that the parent actually sent that person for the child to be picked up, and it's not someone that they don't know. So I think starting with safety measures with very young children is a good thing, to let them understand this is, as a parent or guardian, our way of trying to teach them to protect themselves. So we're not going at them, telling them that there's monsters out there and you have to be careful of every and each single person, but we have to tell them through this safety tips and measures that you can take. This is why we are doing this. We've also, as an organization, started implementing interactive learning with coloring in books and also storybook. So when a child sits and colors into this book, it's got a picture and it's explaining a situation to them. For instance, someone giving them a hug. Is it an appropriate hug? Are they allowed to hug them? The child has the right to say no. Is it stranger when a stranger comes up to you and they give you some, asks you, do you want to come to the car and give you some sweets? How a child should interact. So the interacting learning is very good with our children. So if you take the safety tips, make it an interactive learning situation, that really helps with our younger children. I think when it comes to our teenagers, there's a bit of a more harsh reality that we need to teach them.
Yes.
But I
They
think it's
know
more
what is going
difficult.
on. They've got access to phones. They've got access to the internet. So they're not as dumb as we think they are. They know about what is going on. So
Yes.
unfortunately with them, I found that it's better to sit with them, to be honest and open, but you as a parent also have the responsibility to see the changes in your teenager when there might be something that is a red flag for you to look out for, that they might become a victim to anything.
Bianca, as we discussed, this is obviously a very emotional kind of topic. And I'm really dumbstruck. I've raised two boys, and that was one of the biggest fears I ever had. But obviously, you on a daily basis come across these obstacles. How do you work through this? You as a human being, your colleagues, your team, how do you work through this? Because obviously there's a time delay still waiting for our law enforcement, because you need to hold hands with a lot of people. How do you overcome these obstacles?
Yes, this is not an easy task. It's not easy dealing with distraught families with a hysterical mother, or a child that has gone missing, or a murder, a rape, a trafficking victim. It's really not an easy thing to do, but I've trained myself to deal with this. I have people think I'm quite a very hard, unemotional person, but I'm just a human being. But I have to do my job. I have to help. That is why I've been put into this position. If I can make a difference in one family's life and bring their child back safely, I have made a difference. So that is what we are here to do, is to help that family to bring the child home safely and do whatever we can to do that. Yes, like you said, there are times that lapse, when a case gets reported. But as soon as that case, that is why we also iterate to the families that there's absolutely no waiting period in reporting a person or child as missing. That case can get reported immediately. We can be contacted immediately and we can start assisting. So we know that person is missing. We can start searching in that direct area immediately, start investigating the kidnapping case or the human trafficking case or whatever case it might be. We had a very good case, actually, as an example, last weekend, of a little autistic boy that went missing. Immediately when it was reported, we had everybody jump into action. And there were so many people that came together, stood together, and he was found within the first 2 hours after being reported as missing. So the quicker it gets reported, the quicker action can be taken. Yes, like I said, it's not an easy task. It's very difficult. Unfortunately, we've got cases that are many years that the children or the people have not been found. Some of these cases dating back 30 years plus, where those parents are still in contact with me. I still have to reassure them that everything is being done possible and to never give up hope and to make sure from our side everything is still being done to get the attention of that case so that could never, that people don't forget about those that are still missing.
And I guess once reported, the more information supplied to you guys, the better the chances. What else than information? What is the kind of information someone have to hand over to you to make your life easier or the case being resolved quicker?
Yes, so as much information as possible is vital when it comes to a missing persons case. And the quicker it gets reported, the quicker action can be taken. So when you go to the police station, a SAPS 55 form, the missing persons case is what needs to be opened. So it's obviously the time and the date when that person or child was last seen, where they were last seen, and try and be very specific on which street, which area. People will come and say, oh no, they were only seen in Pretoria. Where in Pretoria? Close to what? If you don't know the street name, give some landmarks, close to, for instance, Menlyn Shopping Centre, about a block away. Then we know where the exact areas was where they were last seen. So we can pull CCTV footage, for instance, in the close by area. The clothes that they were wearing, especially with children, that is very important. Were they seen in a black top, blue jeans, bright yellow jacket, so they can be spotted on the street when we get our flyer out describing the clothes that they were wearing. People know what to look for. And if there might be a situation where a child has been kidnapped, then also if someone has seen the information of that vehicle, the number plate, the make, the model, the color, all those things are very, very important for us to start with that case, to put everything together, to get more information, like I say, from tracking the vehicle to pulling CCTV footage, and to make sure that everything is done in that case with the South African Police Service to bring that child or person back home safely.
Thanks. I think that is amazing info. Bianca, I know statistics is difficult. You explained that before. But what about child trafficking, human trafficking, from the moment they get picked up until the place where they get delivered? And do we ever find them?
Unfortunately, human trafficking is one of the biggest criminal industries currently in the world. We're looking at about $150 billion industry. But it's very difficult to put stats to these types of things, but only 1%, an estimate of 1% of human trafficking victims worldwide is ever found. So it's very difficult to put a framework or a time frame to when a child is taken, how long it takes for them to actually be taken out of a country, how long are they kept in our country. These trafficking rings also, they work in such a sophisticated way. As soon as a child has been taken, they actually change something like over 30 hands, meaning that where they've been taken a block away, they will be handed over to another vehicle. 2 blocks from there, they will be handed over to another vehicle. So it's such a big ring, and to try and trace them and find them, that makes it quite impossible. So it could be in a period of 24 hours that they are taken and out of our country. Hair color is changed, eye color is changed. We've seen that being done actually in literally less than an hour of a child being taken, where they have to completely transform the child by dyeing their hair, changing their hair color, eye color, dressing them in different clothes. So it's ridiculously how fast this can actually happen.
Well, I think then we can end by saying we need to agree to keep our children safe and obviously educate them on the things that can go wrong, because otherwise they will never be found, because with the 1%, that's so small.
It is, and that is worldwide. So it's really a scary thing. And that's why we also urge, especially our teenagers, to never go anywhere alone, especially our malls. Don't go to a bar alone. Always stay in a group of friends. More, we call it the buddy system. Always be 3 or more friends that stay together. Let someone know where you are going, what time you'll be there, what time you're leaving, what time you're expected to be home. It's not that we want to invade our children's privacy, but it is a way of keeping them safe and knowing where they are at all times. So human trafficking, the problem, unfortunately, if that the whole ring that operates, if the urge is there, it will keep on going. For instance, a child, the younger they are, especially a girl, can be sold between 15 to 20 times a day as a prostitute. Where if you go buy drugs can only be used once, for instance. So the demand is there. If the demand keeps on being there, these rings will actually never stop. The same with the organ trafficking. If the demands for organs are out there, that demand will always be there. Unfortunately, some of the human trafficking victims themselves, if they cannot be used anymore for sexual exploitation, and the drugs have not affected them as bad, then they might even be taken and used for the organ trafficking trade, or even to get them pregnant and use them for the illegal adoptions where they have children, where illegal adoptions. So this is all going in a hand-in-hand situation. Unfortunately, the human race is all behind this. If the demand is there, that it will absolutely never stop.
Now, while we've been in this how to protect our own children, how to educate, but as South Africa is a hot spot now for human trafficking, how do we as adults spot when someone has been trafficked in our own country? How do I see from behavior if that child has been trafficked?
So human trafficking victims might not always be spotted by the public because there are certain telltale signs to look out for. So you can look out for children that are malnourished. They might, if they walk past you, not look you in the eye. They might always face away. You'll see a child always shies away, or a person, a human trafficking victims always shies away from the public, for instance. So something that we also did, we had a travel medicine conference about 2 years ago with doctors and nurses on the front line of issuing health certificates and vaccinations for people coming in and out of the countries, and how they can assist in spotting human trafficking victims or potential human trafficking victims. So it's all those signs of, is the child or the person malnourished? Do you see that they have bruises on their bodies, around their arms, how they've been mistreated? So it's those types of signs that might give it away that that might be a suspected human trafficking victim. We also see, unfortunately, children on the streets begging or selling stuffs on street corners. That is also exploitation. Those children are used for money purposes. They are exploited to bring something in. So those also need to be reported because that also falls under human trafficking.
That's a difficult one because you see that on a daily basis. And I can just imagine our population already is in a bit of a difficult situation. So I can just imagine you've got your hands full on that. Now, let's...
That is, it makes it very difficult in the sense of people drive past these children standing and begging on the street corners and not taking even note of them anymore. Not asking the question, where do they come from? Why isn't the parents in the vicinity? Where are the parents? Are these children safe? Are they being abused? Where are they sleeping at night? How are they getting food? There are specific shelters out for children that are homeless, for instance. So we need to take note of this. We need to start opening our eyes to these children and not just looking past them as we drive by.
I can just imagine, because that is really, for me, that is quite a shocking statistic. Even if I just drive past kids now on the street corners, I do realize how often we all do that. But you've mentioned something earlier about Muti and the trafficking.
Yes.
And I can just imagine, is that a very big industry currently?
Yes, that's another problem we are facing in South Africa, is these Muti murders. Unfortunately, this is also something that is not spoken about. It doesn't reach the media that often, but yes, it also goes hand in hand with human trafficking. Many of these children that actually fall victim to these Muti murders are sold to a person to unfortunately be used for their organs or body parts. So yes, that also falls under human trafficking. But once again, it is a subject that is not, spoken about enough. It's not investigated enough because mostly of these cases are also seen as a religion. It is part of their belief, but it's still a child or a person who has been taken, who has been used for their organs and body parts. So this also needs to be spoken up about in South Africa and looked into more, and it needs to be a topic in the media. This is something, the whole human trafficking, kidnapping, it's not a topic that should be discussed only once or twice a year, or whether it's International Missing Children's Day or regarding a movie like Sound of Freedom. This is a topic that should be addressed on a daily basis in South Africa to make or create that awareness and to help make that difference in bringing a child home safely.
Well, to me, it feels like we've only touched the top of the iceberg and there's much more. But I hope that we're going to make a bit of an impact and that people out there will listen and maybe just act.
Thank you. Yes, definitely. I mean, we have to stand together to make that difference. Yes, and another thing that's very important is, especially parents with young children, to always keep a recent photograph with you. Please, there's a lot of people that go and open a case that unfortunately don't even have a photo of their child. We've had to work off sketches before of a child that has gone missing, and it makes it so difficult. So we do ask, please keep a recent photograph that can be given to SAPS and to us when the child has gone missing and a case has been opened, because it's very important that we don't have an outdated photo of having to do an age progression that takes even more time, to get hold of. That might even take a week. So we do that mostly for our cold cases, the age progression. But please always keep a recent photograph of yourself, of your child, with you at all times.
Awesome.
Bianca, thank you very much. This information is invaluable. We really, really appreciate your time. We're going to make sure that once this episode is, as soon as possible, all your information at the bottom of this video with links to the website, and we're going to do hyperlinks to those information packs that are downloadable for the parents as well. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this with us and for sharing your knowledge. We really appreciate you. Thank you.
It's a pleasure, and thank you to you guys. I really appreciate you guys doing this for us, and not promoting, but creating the awareness that is so much needed regarding the issue of children going missing in our country for various reasons.
Thank you so much,
Thank you so much.
Take care. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
You too. Thank you.